When we talk about our equity programs right now, it's really important that we hold our leadership accountable and we pay attention to what's actually happening. I just want to remind you, in April of 2020, EEs and SEs received a random memo, a random email. And in that email, it described the Economic Empowerment Program and the Social Equity Program. And one of the things that was alarming and disturbing was that they changed the definition in that memo of what constituted economic empowerment when it came to ownership. So in the memo, it said that you only needed 10% ownership as opposed to, and it could be direct or indirect ownership, as opposed to 51% ownership, which is what the statute says constitutes equity or economic empowerment ownership. And when that memo went out, there was no public discussion. There had been no public discussion, no policy change, no notification, no explanation as to where this was coming from. So of course, this disturbed a lot of EEs and SEs to the point that several expended numerous efforts and energy around pushing for this memo to be reversed. Fast forward to May 8th or May 7th, when the CCC had their monthly public meeting, the issue came up of the memo, and we had our social justice chair pushing for a vote to change what was stated in that memo, to change the 10% ownership back to 51%. Now, the 51% never changed. It was in statute. There was no policy discussion, no policy change, no public discussion, no legislative order, nothing, no executive order to back what was stated in this memo that was released. And so when the rest of the commissioners looked at the proposition to vote, they said there's nothing to vote on because there was no change that ever happened. At most, this memo just needs to be redacted, it needs to be retracted. And still the social justice chair pushed and said, oh no, we needed to have a vote for 51% and to change it. And it just didn't make any sense as to why the social justice chair was expending so much energy asking for this change when there was no change that took place. Then we see in June, on Juneteenth, where we have the commissioners commemorating the Juneteenth day and identifying their work with addressing equity issues and focusing on conversations around economic empowerment and social equity and how they can improve the program. And what we see is the social justice chair proposing that ownership be changed to 33%. So this inconsistency, you ask, why is it that we are where we are in equity? We have this inconsistency from the leadership. First, it was a memo that went out to all of the EEs and SEs that said ownership was 10%, and that constituted economic empowerment, priority status, and all the other benefits tied to EE, which went against what the legislation and the statute says. Then we have the May meeting where there's a push that riled up the community and said we needed to have a vote, and 51% needs to be what constitutes economic empowerment. And for those who may not be encircled in the social media world fully, after that meeting, there was the huge celebration. We had folks like Grant Smith, the Young Jerks, we had Shailene Title, we had MRCC, all of these folks highlighting and celebrating a victory that did not happen, a victory for a change that never took place because it never needed to take place. And all of the energy was focused on this as if something momentous happened. And to quote one of the commissioners at the meeting, there was no change, and to vote on a change would indicate something momentous happening when there was nothing momentous happening. And that's exactly what we saw transpired. Now here we are, June, July, and the same commissioner that pushed so hard in the eyes of the public and what was celebrated for 51% actually made a recommendation that ownership be dropped to 33%. And so this is what we're saying, pay attention. Why? Because we need the integrity of the equity programs to be maintained, and we need that from the leadership down. And then when we have these types of inconsistencies, you have to ask yourself, why? Why is that? We're not having any meaningful progress. We're not seeing equity in license ownership because we're having these these circular conversations, these red herrings that are being thrown out and distracting the community as if something of substance has transpired when nothing has transpired. Here we are 3-4 months out. We're still at the very same point, but some will have you to believe that there was actual progress when we haven't made any progress. We need to get at real important issues. We need to look at policy changes, policy actions that are going to have impact and result in ownership for economic empowerment and social equity participants, entrepreneurial participants.